Symbolism, arts. 77 languages. Symbolism. Death and the Grave Digger, La Mort et le Fossoyeur, c. 1895, by Carlos Schwabizer. Visual Compendium of Symbolist Motifs. The Angel of Death, Pristine Snow, and the dramatic poses of the characters all express symbolist longings for transfiguration anywhere, out of the world. Years active from the 1860s. Location France, Belgium, Russia, others. Major figures: Charles Baudelaire, Stéphane Mallarmé, Paul Verlaine. Influences: Romanticism, Parnassianism. Decadent movement. Symbolism was a late 19th century art movement of French and Belgian origin in poetry and other arts, seeking to represent absolute truths symbolically, through language and metaphorical images, mainly as a reaction against naturalism and realism. In literature, the style originates with the 1857 publication of Charles Baudelaire's Les Fleurs du Mal. The works of Edgar Allan Poe, which Baudelaire admired greatly and translated into French, were a significant influence and the source of many stock tropes and images. The aesthetic was developed by Stéphane Mallarmé and Paul Verlaine during the 1860s and 1870s. In the 1880s, the aesthetic was articulated by a series of manifestos and attracted a generation of writers. The term symbolist was first applied by the critic Jean Marias, who invented the term to distinguish the symbolists from the related decadents of literature and art. Etymology, edit. The term symbolism is derived from the word symbol, which derives from the Latin symbolum, a symbol of faith, and symbolos, a sign of recognition. In turn from classical Greek symbolon, an object cut in half constituting a sign of recognition. When the carriers were able to reassemble the two halves. In ancient Greece, the symbolon was a shard of pottery which was inscribed and then broken into two pieces, which were given to the ambassadors from two allied city-states as a record of the alliance. Precursors and origins, edit. Symbolism was largely a reaction against naturalism and realism, anti-idealistic styles which were attempts to represent reality in its gritty particularity, and to elevate the humble and the ordinary. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Over the ideal. Symbolism was a reaction in favor of spirituality, imagination, and dreams. 1. Some writers, such as Joris Gyle, who is Mans, began as naturalists before becoming symbolists. 4. Who is Mans? This change represented his increasing interest in religion and spirituality. Certain of the characteristic subjects of the decadents represent naturalist interest in sexuality and taboo topics. But in their case this was mixed with Byronic romanticism and the world weariness characteristic of the fin de siècle period. The symbolist poets have a more complex relationship with Parnassianism, a French literary style that immediately preceded it. While being influenced by Hermeticism, allowing freer versification, and rejecting Parnassian clarity and objectivity, it retained Parnassianism's love of wordplay and concern for the musical qualities of verse. The symbolists continued to admire Théophile Gautier's motto of art for arts sacrées, and retained and modified Parnassianism's mood of ironic detachment. 2. Many symbolist poets, including Stéphane Mallarmé and Paul Verlaine, published. Early works in Le Parnasse contemporain, the poetry anthologies that gave Parnassianism its name. But Arthur Rimbaud publicly mocked prominent Parnassians and published scatological parodies of some of their main authors, including François Copy, misattributed to Copy himself in L'Album Zootique. 3. One of Symbolism's most colorful promoters in Paris was art and literary critic, and occultist Joséphine Péladan, who established the Salon de la Rose and Croix. The Salon hosted a series of 6 presentations of avant-garde art, writing and music during the 1890s, to give a presentation space for artists embracing spiritualism, mysticism, and idealism in their work. A number of symbolists were associated with the Salon movement. Edit. The Symbolist Manifesto, edit. Jean Marias published the Symbolist Manifesto, Le Symbolisme, in Le Figaro on the 18th of September, 1886, see 1886 in Poetry. 4. The Symbolist Manifesto names Charles Baudelaire, Stéphane Mallarmé, and Paul Verlaine as the 3 leading poets of the movement. Marias announced that symbolism was hostile to plain meanings, declamations, false sentimentality and matter-of-fact description, and that its goal instead was to clothe the ideal in a perceptible form whose goal was not in itself, but whose sole purpose was to express the ideal. Ainsi, dans cet art, les tableaux de la nature, les actions des humains, tous les phénomènes concrets en israënt et manifesta euxmemes, ce sont là des apparences sensibles destins et représente los affinités ésotériques avec des idées primordiales. Thus, in this art movement, representations of nature, human activities and all real-life events don't stand on their own, they are rather veiled reflections of the senses pointing to archetypal meanings through their esoteric connections. 4. 5. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Henry Fantin later, by the Table, 1872, depicting Paul Verlaine, Arthur Rimbaud, Léon Vallard, Ernest de Herville and Camille Pelletan, seated, Pierre Elie, Émile Blement, and Jean Acard, standing. Portrait of Charles Baudelaire. C. 1862, whose writing was a precursor of the symbolist style. In a nutshell, as Mallarmé writes in a letter to his friend Henry Cazalis, to depict not the thing but the effect it produces. 6. In 1891, Mallarmé defined symbolism as follows: to name an object is to suppress 3/4 of the delight of the poem, which consists in the pleasure of guessing little by little. To suggest is, that is the dream. It is the perfect use of this mystery that constitutes the symbol, to evoke an object, gradually in order to reveal a state of the soul or, inversely, to choose an object and from it identify a state of the soul, by a series of deciphering operations. There must always be enigma in poetry. 7. While describing the pre-World War I friendship, which defied the pervasive anti-German sentiment and revanchism of the Belle Époque, between French symbolists Paul Verlaine and Stéphane Mallarmé and young and aspiring German symbolist poet Stefan George, Michael and Erika Metzger have written, for the symbolists, the pursuit of art for art's sake was a highly serious, nearly a sacred function, since beauty, in and of itself, stood for a higher meaning beyond itself. In their ultimate higher striving, the French symbolists are not far from the Platonic ideals of the good, the true, and the beautiful, and this idealistic aspect was undoubtedly what appealed to George far more than the aestheticism, the bohemianism, and the apparent nihilism so often superficially associated with this group. 8. Techniques, edit. The symbolist poets wished to liberate techniques of versification in order to allow greater room for fluidity, and as such were sympathetic with the trend toward free verse, as evident in the poems of Gustav Kahn and Ezra Pound. Symbolist poems were attempts to evoke, rather than primarily to describe. Symbolic imagery was used to signify the state of the poet's soul. T.S. Eliot was influenced by the poets Jules Lafargue, Paul Valéry and Arthur Rimbaud, who used the techniques of the symbolist school. 9. Though it has also been said, by whom, that imagism was the style to which both Pound and Eliot subscribed, see Pound's Des Imagistes. Synesthesia was a prized experience. Poets sought to identify and confound the separate senses of scent, sound, and color. In Baudelaire's poem Correspondences, which mentions forays de explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF symbols, forests of symbols, and is considered the touchstone of French symbolism. 10. Illiste des parfums frais comme des chairs d'enfants. Doux comme les hautbois, verts comme les prairies. It de auteurs, corrompus, riches et triomphants. Ayant l'expansion des choses infinies. Comme l'ambre, le musc, le benjoin et l'encens. Qui chanton les transports de l'esprit et des sens. There are fragrances that are fresh like children's skin, calm like oboes, green like meadows, and others, rotten, heady, and triumphant, having the expansiveness of infinite things, like amber, musk, benzoin, and incense, which sing of the raptures of the soul and senses. And Rimbaud's poem Voiles. Annoy, e blanc, I rouge, u vert, o blue, voiles. A black, e white, I red, u green, o blue, vowels. Both poets seek to identify one sense experience with another. The earlier romanticism of poetry used symbols, but these symbols were unique and privileged objects. The symbolists were more extreme, investing all things, even vowels and perfumes, with potential symbolic value. The physical universe, then, is a kind of language that invites a privileged spectator to decipher it. Although this does not yield a single message so much as a superior network of associations. 11. Symbolist symbols are not allegories, intended to represent, they are instead intended to evoke particular states of mind. The nominal subject of Malamess le Cygne, the swan, is of a swan trapped in a frozen lake. Significantly, in French, Cygne is a homophone of Sina, a sign. The overall effect is of overwhelming whiteness, and the presentation of the narrative elements of the description is quite indirect. Le voyage, le vivace, et le bel aujourd'hui. Va-t-il nous décrire avec un coup d'œil live? Si l'acteur oublie hanti sous le giver. Le transparent glacier des vols qui en ont pas foué. Un sin autrefois si souvient que c'est lui. Magnifique mais qui sont espoir si deliver. The Virgin, lively, and beautiful today. Will it tear us up with a drunken wingbit? This hard-forgotten lake that lurks beneath the frost. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Eugen Bracht, The Shore of Oblivion. 1889. The transparent glacier of flights not taken with a blow from a drunken wing. A swan of long ago remembers that it is he, magnificent but without hope, who breaks free. Paul Verlaine and the Poet's Maudits, edit. Of the several attempts at defining the essence of symbolism, perhaps none was more influential than Paul Verlaine's 1884 publication of a series of essays on Tristan Corbière, Arthur Rimbaud, Stéphane Mallarmé, Marceline Desbordes-Vamour, Gérard de Nerval, and Pauvre Lilian, Paul Lilian, an anagram of Paul Verlaine's own name, each of whom Verlaine numbered among the Poets Maudits, accursed poets. Verlaine argued that in their individual and very different ways, each of these hitherto neglected poets found genius. A curse, it isolated them from their contemporaries, and as a result these poets were not at all concerned to avoid hermeticism and idiosyncratic writing styles. 12. They were also portrayed as at odds with society, having tragic lives, and often given to self-destructive tendencies. These traits were not hindrances but consequences of their literary gifts. Verlaine's concept of the poet maudit in turn borrows from Baudelaire, who opened his collection Les Fleurs du Mal with the poem Benediction, which describes a poet whose internal serenity remains undisturbed by the contempt of the people surrounding him. 13. In this conception of genius and the role of the poet, Verlaine referred indirectly to the aesthetics of Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher of pessimism, who maintained that the purpose of art was to provide a temporary refuge from the world of strife of the will. 14. Philosophy, edit. Schopenhauer's aesthetics represented shared concerns with the symbolist program. They both tended to consider art as a contemplative refuge from the world of strife and will. As a result of this desire for an artistic refuge, the symbolists used characteristic themes of mysticism and otherworldliness, a keen sense of mortality, and a sense of the malign power of sexuality, which Albert Samain termed a fruit of death upon the tree of life. 15. Mallarmé's poem Les Fenêtres, 16. expresses all of these themes clearly. A dying man in a hospital bed, seeking escape from the pain and dreariness of his physical surroundings, turns toward his window but then turns away in disgust. From El homme l'ame dur. Votre dans le bonheur, aux uses seuls appétits. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Pornocrates, by Félicien Rops. Etching and Aquatint, 1878. Mangent, it qui assentet à church set or Dieu. Pour l'offre et la femme à latences pétis. The hard-souled man, wallowing in happiness, where only his appetites feed, and who insists on seeking out this filth to offer to the wife suckling his children. And in contrast, he turns his back on life, tourne l'épaule à la vie, and he exclaims, J'ai mi mia it mi voix angie. It j'ai mieux, it j'ai que la vitre soit l'art, soit la mysticite. A renaître, portant mon rêve en diadème. Au ciel antérieur où fleurit la beauté. I look at myself and I seem like an angel, and I die, and I love. Whether the mirror might be art, or mysticism. To be reborn, bearing my dream as a crown. Under that former sky where beauty flourishes. Symbolists and Decadents, edit. The Symbolist style has frequently been confused with the Decadent movement. The name derived from French literary critics in the 1880s, suggesting the writers were self-indulgent and obsessed with taboo subjects. 17. While a few writers embraced the term, most avoided it. Jean Marias manifesto was largely a response to this polemic. By the late 1880s, the terms symbolism and decadence were understood to be almost synonymous. 18. Though the aesthetics of the styles can be considered similar in some ways, the two remain distinct. The symbolists were those artists who emphasized dreams and ideals. The decadents cultivated prosaic, ornamented, or hermetic styles, and morbid subject matters. 19. The subject of the decadence of the Roman Empire was a frequent source of literary images and appears in the works of many poets of the period, regardless of which name they chose for their style, as in Verlaine's Langue, 20. Je suis l'empire et la fin de la décadence, qui regarde passer les grands barbes blancs, en composant des acrostiches indolentes. Dun style d'or ou la langue du soleil dans. I am the empire at the endgame of decadence, watching the great pale barbarians passing by, all the while composing lazy acrostic poems in a gilded style where the languishing sun dances. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Victor Vasnezov, The Night at the Crossroads, 1878. Pierre Puvis de Chavance. Jeunes filles au bord de la mer. Young Girls on the Edge of the Sea, 1879, Musée d'Orsay, Paris. Periodical Literature, edit. A number of important literary publications were founded by symbolists or became associated with the style. The first was La Vogue, initiated in April 1886. In October of that same year, Jean Marias, Gustave Kahn, and Paul Adam began the periodical Le Symboliste. One of the most important symbolist journals was Mercure de France, edited by Alfred Villette, which succeeded La Pléiade, founded in 1890. This periodical endured until 1965. Pierre Louis initiated La Conque, a periodical whose symbolist influences were alluded to by Jorge Luis Borges in his story Pierre Menard, author of The Quixote. Other symbolist literary magazines included La Revue Blanche, La Revue Wagnerienne, La Plume and La Voyanie. Remy de Gourmont and Félix Fénion were literary critics associated with symbolism. The symbolist and decadent literary styles were satirized by a book of poetry, Les Déliquescences d'Adore Flaupit, published in 1885 by Henry Beauclerc and Gabriel Vicaire. 21. In other media, edit. Visual arts, edit. See also, symbolist painting. Symbolism in literature is distinct from symbolism in art, although the two were similar in many aspects. In painting, symbolism can be seen as a revival of some mystical tendencies in the Romantic tradition, and was close to the self-consciously morbid and private decadent movement. There were several rather dissimilar groups of symbolist painters and visual artists, which included Paul Gauguin, Gustave Moreau, Gustave Klimt, Michalagius Constantinos, Ilianis, Jacek Malczewski, Odilon Redon, Pierre Puvis de Chavance, Henry Fantin-Later, Gaston Bussière, Edvard Munch, Fernand Knopf, Felician Rops, and Jan Torup. Symbolism in painting was even more widespread geographically than symbolism in poetry, affecting Mikhail Vrubel, Nicholas Roerich, Viktor Borisov Musatov, Martyros Srian, Mikhail Nesterov, Leon Bakst, Elena Gorikhova in Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. John William Waterhouse, St. Cecilia, 1895. Russia, as well as Frida Kahlo in Mexico, citation needed, Elihu Vedder, Remedios Vero, Morris Graves and David Chitler Paladin in the United States. Auguste Rodin is sometimes considered a symbolist sculptor. The symbolist painters used mythological and dream imagery. The symbols used by symbolism are not the familiar emblems of mainstream iconography but intensely personal, private, obscure and ambiguous references. More a philosophy than an actual style of art, symbolism in painting influenced the contemporary Art Nouveau style and Les Nobis. 14. Music, edit. Symbolism had some influence on music as well. Many symbolist writers and critics were early enthusiasts of the music of Richard Wagner, 22, an avid reader of Schopenhauer. The symbolist aesthetic affected the works of Claude Debussy. His choices of libretti, texts, and themes come almost exclusively from the symbolist canon. Compositions such as his settings of Cinq Poèmes de Charles Baudelaire, various art songs on poems by Verlaine, the opera Pellézit Melisande with a libretto by Maurice Maeterlinck, and his unfinished sketches that illustrate two Poe stories, The Devil in the Belfry and The Fall of the House of Usher, all indicate that Debussy was profoundly influenced by symbolist themes and tastes. His best-known work, the Prélude à l'Épres Midi d'un Faun, was inspired by Mallarmé's poem, À l'Épres Midi d'un Faun. Citation needed. The symbolist aesthetic also influenced Alexandre Scriabin's compositions. Arnold Schoenberg's Pierrot Lunaire takes its text from German translations of the symbolist poems by Albert Giraud, showing an association between German expressionism and symbolism. Richard Strauss's 1905 opera Salome, based on the play by Oscar Wilde, uses a subject frequently depicted by symbolist artists. Prose fiction, edit. Symbolism's style of the static and hieratic adapted less well to narrative fiction than it did to poetry. Joris Gylhuisman's 1884 novel A Rebowers, English title, Against Nature or Against the Grain, explored many themes that became associated with the symbolist aesthetic. This novel, in which very little happens, catalogues the psychology of Des Esseintes, an eccentric, reclusive antihero. Oscar Wilde was influenced by the novel as he wrote Salome, and Huisman's book appears in the picture of Dorian Gray. The titular character becomes corrupted after reading the book. 23. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Alexandre Benoist for Stravinsky's Petrushka in 1911. Paul Adam was the most prolific and representative author of symbolist novels. Citation needed. Les Demoiselles Goubert, 1886, co-written with Jean Marias, is an important transitional work between naturalism and symbolism. Few symbolists used this form. One exception was Gustave Kahn, who published Le Roi Fou in 1896. In 1892, Georges Rodenbach wrote the short novel Bruges la Mort, set in the Flemish town of Bruges, which Rodenbach described as a dying medieval city of mourning and quiet contemplation. In a typically symbolist juxtaposition, the dead city contrasts with the diabolical reawakening of sexual desire. 24. The cynical, misanthropic, misogynistic fiction of Jules Barbey d'Aurevilly is sometimes considered symbolist, as well. Gabriel D'Annunzio wrote his first novels in the symbolist manner. Theatre, edit. The characteristic emphasis on an internal life of dreams and fantasies have made symbolist theatre difficult to reconcile with more recent trends. Auguste Villiers de L'Isle Adams' drama Axel, Revue de 1890, is a definitive symbolist play. In it, two Rosicrucian aristocrats become enamored of each other while trying to kill each other, only to agree to commit suicide mutually because nothing in life could equal their fantasies. From this play, Edmund Wilson adopted the title Axel's Castle for his influential study of the symbolist literary aftermath. Maurice Maeterlinck, also a symbolist playwright, wrote The Blind, 1890, The Intruder, 1890. Interior, 1891, Pellers and Melisande, 1892, and The Bluebird, 1908. Eugenio de Castro is considered one of the introducers of symbolism in the Iberian Peninsula. He wrote Belkis, dramatic prose poem as he called it, about the doomed passion of Belkis, the Queen of Sheba, to Solomon, depicting in an avant-garde and violent style the psychological tension and recreating very accurately the 10th century BC Israel. He also wrote King Gala and Polycrates' Ring, being one of the most prolific symbolist theoreticians. 25. Lughnpo, 1869–1940, was an actor, director, and theatre producer of the late 19th century. Lughnpo sought to create a unified non-realistic theatre of poetry and dreams through atmospheric staging and stylized acting. 26. Upon learning about symbolist theatre, he never wanted to practice any other form. After beginning as an actor in the Theatre Libre and Theatre d'Art, Lughnpo grasped onto the symbolist movement and founded the Theatre de l'Oeuvre, where he was manager from 1892 until 1929. Some of his greatest successes include opening his own symbolist theatre, producing the first staging of Alfred Jarvis Uburoy, 1896, and introducing French theatregoers to playwrights such as Ibsen and Strindberg. 26. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Black Night. White Snow. The wind, the wind. It will not let you go. The wind, the wind. Through God's whole world it blows. The wind is weaving the white snow. Brother ice peeps from below. Stumbling and tumbling. Folk slip and fall. God pity all. From the 12, 1918. Trans. Babette Deutsch and Avram Yomolinski, 28. Night, Street and Streetlight, Drug Store. The purposeless, half-dim, drab light. For all the use live on a quarter century. Nothing will change. There's no way out. You'll die and start all over, live twice. Everything repeats itself, just as it was. Night, the canals rippled icy. The later works of the Russian playwright Anton Chekhov have been identified by essayist Paul Schmidt as being much influenced by symbolist pessimism. 27. Both Konstantin Stanislavski and Vsevolod Meyerhold experimented with symbolist modes of staging in their theatrical endeavors. Drama by symbolist authors formed an important part of the repertoire of the Théâtre de l'Œuvre and the Théâtre d'Effect, edit. Among English-speaking artists, the closest counterpart to symbolism was aestheticism. The Pre-Raphaelites were contemporaries of the earlier symbolists, and have much in common with them. Symbolism had a significant influence on modernism. Rémy de Gourmont considered the Imagists were its descendants. 29, and its traces can also be detected in the work of many modernist poets, including T.S. Eliot, Wallace Stevens, Conrad Aiken, Hart Crane, and W.B. Yeats in the Anglophone tradition and Rubén Darío in Hispanic literature. The early poems of Guillaume Apollinaire have strong affinities with symbolism. Early Portuguese modernism was heavily influenced by symbolist poets, especially Camilo Pisanha. Fernando Pessoa had many affinities to symbolism, such as mysticism, musical versification, subjectivism and transcendentalism. Edmund Wilson's 1931 study Axel's Castle focuses on the continuity with symbolism and several important writers of the early 20th century, with a particular emphasis on Yeats, Eliot, Paul Valéry, Marcel Proust, James Joyce, and Gertrude Stein. Wilson concluded that the symbolists represented a dreaming retreat into things that are dying. The whole belletristic tradition of Renaissance culture perhaps compelled to specialize more and more driven in on itself, as industrialism and democratic education have come to press it closer and closer. 30. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF Surface. The drugstore, the street, and streetlight. Night, street and streetlight. Drugstore. 1912, trans. By Alex Sigale. Faragotzo, who, the Symbolist, 1908, satirical piece in Art Nouveau style. This section possibly contains original research. Please improve it by verifying the claims made and adding inline citations. Statements consisting only of original research should be removed. February 2018, learn how and when to remove this message. After the beginning of the 20th century, symbolism had a major effect on Russian poetry even as it became less and less popular in France. Russian symbolism originally began as an emulation of the French original, but then, under the influence of Vyacheslav Ivanov, it radically diverged until it became something unrecognizable, steeped in the doctrines of Eastern Orthodoxy and the Christian mystical philosophy of Vladimir Solovyov. It began the careers of several major poets such as Alexander Blok, Andrei Bely, Boris Pasternak, and Marina Tsvetaeva. Bely's novel Petersburg, 1912, is considered the greatest example of Russian symbolist prose. Primary influences on the style of Russian symbolism were the irrationalistic and mystical poetry and philosophy of Fyodor Tyutchev and Solovyov, the novels of Fyodor Dostoevsky, the Operas of Richard Wagner, 31, The Philosophy of Arthur. Schopenhauer, 32, and Friedrich Nietzsche, 33, French symbolist. And decadent poets, such as Stéphane Mallarmé, Paul Verlaine, and Charles Baudelaire, and the dramas of Henrik Ibsen. The style was largely inaugurated by Nikolai Minsky's article The Ancient Debate, 1884, and Dmitry Merezhkovsky's book on the causes of the decline and on the new trends in contemporary Russian literature, 1892. Both writers promoted extreme individualism and the act of creation. Merezhkovsky was known for his poetry as well as a series of novels on God-men, among whom he counted Christ, Joan of Arc, Dante, Leonardo da Vinci, Napoleon, and, later, Hitler. His wife, Zinaida Gypius, also a major poet of early symbolism, opened a salon in St. Petersburg, which came to be known as the headquarters of Russian decadence. Andrei Bilis' Petersburg novel, A Portrait of the Social Strata of the Russian Capital, is frequently cited as a late example of symbolism in 20th-century Russian literature. In Romania, symbolists directly influenced by French poetry first gained influence during the 1880s. When Alexandru Macedonsky reunited a group of young poets associated with his magazine, Literaturul, polemicizing with the established Junimi and overshadowed by the influence of Mihai. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Salambo, 1907, by Gaston Bussier. Eminescu, Romanian symbolism was recovered as an inspiration during and after the 1910s, when it was exampled by the works of Tudor Argzi, Ion Minulescu, George Bacovia, Mate Caragiale, Tristan Serra and Tudor Vianu, and praised by the modernist magazines Bertorul. The symbolist painters were an important influence on Expressionism and Surrealism in painting, two movements which descend directly from symbolism proper. The Harlequins, Paupers, and Clowns of Pablo Picasso's Blue Period show the influence of symbolism, and especially of Puvis de Chavannes. In Belgium, symbolism became so popular that it came to be known as a national style, particularly in landscape painting. 34. The static strangeness of painters like René Magritte can be considered as a direct continuation of symbolism. The work of some symbolist visual artists, such as Jan Torup, directly affected the curvilinear forms of Art Nouveau. Many early motion pictures also employ symbolist visual imagery and themes in their staging, set designs, and imagery. The films of German Expressionism owe a great deal to symbolist imagery. The virginal good girls seen in the cinema of D.W. Griffith, and the silent film Bad Girls portrayed by Theda Bara, both show the continuing influence of symbolism, as do the Babylonian scenes from Griffith's Intolerance. Symbolist imagery lived on longest in horror film, as late as 1932, Carl Theodor Dreyer's Vampire showed the obvious influence of symbolist imagery. Parts of the film resemble tableau vivant recreations of the early paintings of Edvard Munch. 35. Symbolists, edit. Precursors, edit. William Blake, 1757 1827, English poet and artist, Songs of Innocence. Caspar David Friedrich, 1774 1840, German painter. Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog. Thomas Carlyle, 1795 1881, Scottish essayist, historian, and philosopher, Sartor-Resartus, 36. Alexander Pushkin, 1799 1837, Russian poet and writer. Eugene Onegin. Prosper Mérimée, 1803-1870, French novelist. Or Markovic Koda, 1806-1891, Serbian poet. Romaranka. Gerard de Nerval, 1808-1855, French poet. Jules Aimé de Barbey d'Aurevilly, 1808-1889, French writer. Edgar Allan Poe, 1809-1849, American poet and writer, The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket. Mikhail Lermontov, 1814-1841, Russian poet and writer, a hero of our time. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Charles Baudelaire, 1821-1867, French poet, Les Fleurs du Mal. Gustave Flaubert, 1821-1880, French writer, Madame Bovary. Dante Gabriel Rossetti, 1828-1882, English poet and painter, Beta Beatrix. Christina Rossetti, 1830-1894, English poet. Authors, edit. Armenian. Misak Metsarants, 1886-1908. Levin Shant, 1869-1951. Siamanto, 1878-1915. Daniel Veruyan, 1884-1915. Vahan Tirian, 1885-1920. Gostin Zarian, 1885-1969. Diran Krakian, 1885-1921. Yelish Charents, 1897-1937. Belgian. Albert Giraud, 1860-1929. Charles van Lerbergy, 1861-1907. Maurice Maeterlinck, 1862-1949. Albert Mockel, 1866-1945. Georges Rodenbach, 1855-1898. Emile Verhaeren, 1855-1916. Czech. Otakar Buzina, 1868-1929. Victor Dyk, 1877-1931. Karel Lavik, 1874-1898. Gimayan, 1882-1939. Antonin Sova, 1864-1928. Dutch. Marcellus Emments, 1848-1923. Louis Couperus, 1863-1923. J. H. Leopold, 1865-1925. English. Edmund Gosse, 1849-1928. William Ernest Henley, 1849-1903. Arthur Symons, 1865-1945. René Vivian, 1877-1909. French. Paul Adam, 1862-1920. Albert Auria, 1865-1892. Leon Bloy, 1846-1917. Early Henry Barbaz, 1873-1935. Henry Cazalis, 1840-1909. Georges Dumel, 1884-1966. Paul Fort, 1872-1960. Remy de Gourmont, 1858-1915. Nicolette Hennique, born 1886. Joris Gile Huismans, 1848-1907. Auguste Villiers Elil Adam, 1838-1889. Alfred Jarry, 1873-1907. Gustave Kahn, 1859-1936. Jules Laforgue, 1860–1887, Uruguayan. Wrote in French. Comte de Lautréamont, 1846–1870. Uruguayan, wrote in French. Jean Lorraine, 1855–1906. Stéphane Mallam, 1842–1898. Alexandre Merciero, 1884–1945. Oscar Milas, 1877–1939, Lithuanian, wrote in French. Jean Marias, 1856–1910, Greek, wrote in French. Saint Paul Roux, 1861–1940. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Emile Nelligan, 1879–1941, Canadian, wrote in Quebec French. Germain Nouveau, 1851–1920. Rothschild, 1860–1953. Henry de Regnier, 1864–1936. Arthur Rimbaud, 1854–1891. Jules Romains, 1885–1972. Albert Samain, 1858–1900. Marcel Schwob, 1867–1905. Paul Valéry, 1871–1945. Paul Verlaine, 1844–1896. Francis Weil Griffin, 1863–1937. Charles Vildrac, 1882–1971. Georgian. Valerian Gaprindashvili, 1888–1941. Paulo Iashvili, 1894–1937. Sergo Kldiashvili, 1893–1986. George I. Leonids, 1899–1966. Kolau Nadirads, 1895–1991. Grigol Robakides, 1880–1962. Titian Tabides, 1895–1937. Sandro Sirikids, 1894–1923. German and Austrian. Stefan George, 1868–1933, German. Hugo von Hofmannsthal, 1874–1929. Austrian. Alfred Kubin, 1877–1959, Austrian. Gustav Meyrink, 1868–1932, Austrian. Rainer Maria Rilke, 1875–1926, Austro. Bohemian. Arthur Schnitzler, 1862–1931, Austrian. Irish language. See also, modern literature in Irish. Patrick Pearse, 1879–1916. Mayatin O'Daya-Ian, 1910–1988. Polish. See also, Young Poland Movement. Stanislaw Korabczos-Albowski, 1876–1901. Antoni Lang, 1861–1929. Tadeusz Micinski, 1873–1918. Portuguese and Brazilian. Manuel da Silva Gaio, P.T., C.A., 1861–1934. João da Cruz e Souza, 1861–1898, Brazilian. Raul Brandão, 1867–1930. Alberto Osorio de Castro, P.T., de, 1868–1946. Eugenio de Castro, 1869–1944. Alphonsus de Guimarães, 1870–1921. Brazilian. Antonio Nobre, 1867–1900. Camilo Pisangha, 1867–1926. Augusto Gil, 1873–1929. Mario de Sacarnero, 1890–1916. Russian. Innokenty Anensky, 1855–1909. Konstantin Balmont, 1867–1942. Andrei Billy, 1880–1934. Marina Tsvetaeva, 1892–1941. Alexander Bloch, 1880–1921. Valery Bryasov, 1873–1924. Georgy Chulkov, 1879–1939. Zinaida Gypius, 1869–1945. Vyacheslav Ivanov, 1866–1949. Fyodor Sologub, 1863–1927. Vladimir Solovyov, 26, 1853–1900. Dmitry Merezhkovsky, 1865–1941. Tefi, 1872–1952. Maximilian Voloshin, 1877–1932. Scottish Gaelic. Father Alan MacDonald, 1859–1905. Sorley MacLean, 1911–1996. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Diasa Maki and Hiasa, 1915–1984. Serbian. Sveta Zakarovic, 1875–1919. Jovan Due, 1871–1943. Petarkoi, 1877–1916. Veljko Petrovic, poet, 1884–1967. Vladislav Pekovic Dis, 1880–1917. Sima Pandurovic, 1883–1960. Milan Rakic, 1876–1938. Isidora Sekulic, 1877–1958. Jovan Skurlik, 1877–1914. Borisov Stankovic, 1876–1927. Alexa Anti, 1868–1924. Others. Josip Mern Alexandrov, 1879–1901. Slovene. George Bakovia, 1881–1957, Romanian. Georgis Baltruatis, 1873–1944, Lithuanian. Jorge Luis Borges, 1899–1986, Argentine. Maitu Caragiale, 1885–1936, Romanian. Dimko Dibilyanov, 1887–1916, Bulgarian. Victor Egaltis, 1877–1945, Latvian. Adi Endra, 1877–1919, Hungarian. Dumitru Carnabat, 1877–1949, Romanian. Ivan Krasko, 1876–1958, Slovak. Stuart Merrill, 1863–1915, American. Giovanni Pascoli, 1855–1912, Italian. Influence in English literature, edit. English language authors who influenced or were influenced by symbolism include Conrad Aiken, 1889–1973. Max Beerbohm, 1872–1956. Christopher Brennan, 1870–1932. Roy Campbell, 1900–1957. Hart Crane, 1899–1932. Olive Custance, 1874–1944. Ernest Dowson, 1867–1900. T.S. Eliot, 1888–1965. James Elroy Flecker, 1884–1915. John Gray, 1866–1934. George MacDonald, 1824–1905. Arthur Machen, 1863–1947. Catherine Mansfield, 1888–1923. Edith Sitwell, 1887–1964. Clark Ashton Smith, 1893–1961. George Sterling, 1869–1926. Wallace Stevens, 1879–1955. Algernon Charles Swinburne, 1837–1909. Francis Thompson, 1859–1907. J.R.R. Tolkien, 1892–1973, 37. Rosamund Marriott Watson, 1860–1911. Oscar Wilde, 1854–1900. W. B. Yeats, 1865–1939. Symbolist visual artists, edit. See also, category symbolist painters and category symbolist sculptors. French. Edmond de Mangin, 1858–1936. Émile Bernard, 1868–1941. Gaston Bussière, painter, 1862–1929. Eugene Carrière, 1849–1906. Pierre Puvis de Chavannes, 1824–1898. Maurice Denis, 1870–1943. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Henry Fantinlater, 1836–1904. Charles Villager, 1863–1928. Paul Gauguin, 1848–1903. Charles Gillows, 1866–1946. Lucien Lévide Hermer, 1865–1953. Pierre Félix Massiot, 1869–1937. Edgar Marxens, 1871–1954. Gustave Moyot, 1826–1898. Gustave Adolphe Mosser, 1883–1971. Alphonse Osbert, 1857–1939. Armand Point, 1861–1932. Henri Renan, 1857–1900. Odilon Redon, 1840–1916. Alexandre Sion, 1855–1917. Russian. See also, Russian Symbolism and the Blue Rose Group. Leon Bakst, 1866–1924. Alexandre Benoy, 1870–1960. Ivan Bilibin, 1876–1942. Viktor Borisov Musatov, 1870–1905. Konstantin Bogaevsky, 1872–1943. Wassily Kandinsky, Early Works, 1866. 1944. Mikhail Nesterov, 1862–1942. Nicholas Roerich, 1874–1947. Konstantin Somouf, 1869–1939. Viktor Vaznezov, 1848–1926. Mikhail Vrubel, 1856–1910. Belgian. Felician Rops, 1855–1898. Fernand Knopf, 1858–1921. James Enzer, 1860–1949. Egide Rombors, 1865–1942. Leon Frederick, 1865–1940. William de Nunks, 1867–1935. Jean Delville, 1867–1953. Leon Spilliot, 1882–1946. Romanian. See also, Symbolist movement in Romania. Octavian Smigelski, 1866–1912, Austro. Hungarian-born, culturally Romanian. Mihail Simonidi, 1870–1933. Lascavorel, 1879–1918. Apcar Baltazar, 1880–1909. Ion Theodorescu Schorn, 1882–1939. German. Eugen Bracht, 1842–1921. Karl Wilhelm Diefenbach, 1851–1913. Fritz Ehler, 1868–1940. Ludwig Fahrenkrog, 1867–1952. Fidus, 1868–1948. Otto Greiner, 1869–1916. Ludwig von Hoffmann, 1861–1945. Max Klinger, 1857 July 1920. Emil Nold, 1867–1953. Max Pietschmann, 1865–1952. Paul Schadrosser, 1862–1916. Sascha Schneider, 1870–1927. Clara Siert, 1862–1945. Franz von Stuck, 1863–1928. Hans Unger, 1872–1936. Oskar Zwintscher, 1870–1916. Swiss. Arnold Böcklin, 1827–1901. Ferdinand Hodler, 1853–1918. Carlos Schwabe, 1866–1926. Austrian. Albin Egerlians, 1868–1926. Rudolf Jettmar, 1869–1939. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Gustav Klimt, 1862–1918. Alfred Kubin, 1877–1959. Karl Medies, 1868–1945. Richard Muller, 1874–1954. Polish. Jacek Malczewski, 1854–1929. Kazimierz Stabrowski, 1869–1929. Witold Wojtkiewicz, 1879–1909. Stanislaw Wyspiański, 1869–1907. Others. George Frederick Watts, 1817–1904, English. James A. McNeill Whistler, 1834–1903. American. Albert Pinkham Ryder, 1847–1917. American. John William Waterhouse, 1849–1917. English. Luis Ricardo Falero, 1851–1896, Spanish. Ansel Stranack, 1901–1981, Scottish. Jan Torup, 1858–1928, Dutch. Giovanni Segantini, 1858–1899, Italian. Edvard Munch, 1863–1944, Norwegian. Arthur Bowen Davies, 1863–1928, American. Elisu Visconti, 1866–1944, Brazilian. John Duncan, 1866–1945, Scottish. Uli František Kuka, 1871–1957, Czech. Hugo Simberg, 1873–1917, Finnish. Francis MacDonald, 1873–1921, Scottish. Fermin Arango, 1874–1962, Spanish. Argentine. Michalagius Constantinos Ilianis, 1875. 1911, Lithuanian. Stephen Alexic, 1876–1923, Serbian. Felice Casarati, 1883–1963, Italian. Anselmo Buxai, 1887–1955, Italian. Zdev Ruban, 1890–1970, Polish/Israeli. Beda Stjeranskans, 1867–1910, Finnish. Symbolist playwrights, edit. Gerhard Hauptmann, 1862–1946, German. Hugo von Hofmannsthal, 1874–1929, Austrian. Federico Garcia Lorca, 1898–1936, Spanish. Father Alan MacDonald, 1959–1904, Scottish Gaelic literature. Maurice Maeterlinck, 1862–1949, Belgian. Martin O'Dyer, 1910–1988, Irish. Lugnpo, 1869–1940, French. Reinhard Sorge, 1892–1916, German. Composers affected by symbolist ideas, edit. Richard Wagner, 1813–1883, German. Pio Ilyich Tchaikovsky, 1840–1893, Russian. Gabriel Faure, 1845–1924, French. Charles Loeffler, 1861–1935, American. Claude Debussy, 1862–1918, French. Richard Strauss, 1864–1949, German. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Eric Satie, 1866–1925, French. Béla Bartók, 1881–1945, Hungarian. Alexander Scriabin, 1872–1915, Russian. Maurice Ravel, 1875–1937, French. Michalagius Constantinos Ilianis, 1875–1911, Lithuanian. Mieczysław Karlowicz, 1876–1909, Polish. Cyril Scott, 1879–1970, English. Karol Szymanowski, 1882–1937, Polish. Lily Bolanger, 1893–1918, French. Arnold Schoenberg, 1874–1951, Austrian. Gallery, edit. Vasily Vrishkajan, The Apotheosis of War, 1871. Gustav Klimt, Allegory of Sculptor, 1889. Jan Torup, The Three Brides, 1893. Hugo Simberg, The Garden of Death, 1896. Fernand Knopf, Incense, 1898. Mikhail Vrubel, The Swan Princess, 1900. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Franz von Stuck, Susanna. Und die beiden Alten, 1913. The Cover to Alexander. Blocks 1909 Book Theatre. Konstantin Somoofs. Illustrations for the Russian symbolist poet display the continuity between symbolism and art. Nouveau artists such as Aubrey Beardsley, Alfred Kubin, The Last King, 1902. Franz von Stuck, Die Sunday, 1893. Sascha Schneider, The Feeling of Dependence, 1920. Gustav Moyo, Jupiter. and Siemel, 1894-95. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Ferdinand Hodler, The Night, 1889-90. Arnold Böcklin Die. Totnin Silai, 1880. Jacek Malczewski. Poisoned Well with Chimera, 1905. Mikhail Nesterov, The Vision of the Youth. Bartholomew, 1890. Caesarea Sakagai, It, La Veta, 1898. See also, edit. Abeda Cretail. Sigmund Freud. Mystical Anarchism. Synthetism. The Yellow Book. Visionary Art. References, edit. 1 Balakayan, Anna, The Symbolist Movement, A Critical Appraisal. Random House, 1967, Chapter 2. 2 Balakayan, See above, see also Houston, Introduction. 3 Album Zutik Wikisource. Gorlima, NRF, Bibliothèque de la Pléiade. 12 February 1965. pp. 111121. Site book, website equals ignored, help. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. 4 AB Jean Marias, UN Manifeste littéraire, Le Symbolisme, Le Figaro. Supplement littéraire, number 38. Saturday the 18th of September, 1886, p. 150, Bibliothèque Nationale de France, Gallica. 5 Jean Marias, Le Manifeste du Symbolisme, Le Figaro, 1886. 6 Conway Morris, Roderick the Elusive Symbolist Movement International Herald Tribune, 17 March, 2007. 7 Edward Hirsch, 2017, The Essential Poets Glossary, Mariner Books. Page 314. 8 Michael and Erica Metzger, 1972, Stefan George, Twain's World Authors Series. Page 21. 9 Untermeyer, Louis, Preface to Modern American Poetry Harcourt Brace & Co. New York 1950. 10 Pratt, William. The Imagist Poem, Modern Poetry in Miniature, Storyline Press, 1963, expanded. 2001. ISBN 1-58654-009-2. 11 Olds, Marshall C. Literary Symbolism, originally published, as Chapter 14, in a companion to Modernist Literature and Culture, edited by David Bradshaw and Kevin J. H. Detmar. Malden, Ma. Blackwell Publishing, 2006. Pages 155162. 12 Paul Verlaine, Les Poets Maudits. 13 Charles Baudelaire, Benediction. 14 A.B. Delvale, Bernard, La Poésie Symboliste, Anthology, Introduction. ISBN 2-221-50161-6. 15 Lux, Fruit de Mort et l'Arbre de la Vie. Albert Samain, Lux, in the publication Au Jardin de l'Infante, 1889. 16 Stefan Mallam, Les Fenêtres archived 9 December 2004 at the Wayback Machine. 17 What was the Decadent Movement in Literature? With pictures. Wise Geek. 5 June 2023. 18 David Schimmelpenninck van der Oye, Russian Orientalism, Asia in the Russian Mind from Peter the Great to the Emigration, New Haven, Yale Up, 2010, p. 211, online. 19 olds, see above, p. 160. 20 longer, from J. Dizit Nagwia, 1884. 21 Henry Beauclerc and Gabriel Vicaire, Les Diliquescences d'Adore Flaupit, 1885. Les Diliquescences Poems Décadents d'Adore Flaupit, avec sa vie Palmarius Tupera by Henry Beauclerc and Gabriel Vicaire, in French. 22 Julien Philippe, The Symbolists, 1977, p. 8. 23 Decadent Novella Rebowers, or, Against Nature. The British Library. Archived from the original on the 7th of August, 2020. 24 Alan Hollinghurst, Bruges of Size, The Guardian, the 29th of January, 2005, accessed the 26th of April, 2009. 25 Saraiva, Antonio José, Lopes, Oscar, 2017. Historia da Literatura Portuguesa, 17th ed. Lisboa. Porto Editora. ISBN 978-972-0-30170-3. 26 ABC Symbolism. Encyclopaedia Britannica. Retrieved 21 February 2023. 27 The Plays of Anton Chekhov, trans. Paul Schmidt, 1997. 28 Block, Alexander, Yomolinsky, Avram, Deutsch, Babet, 1929. 12. The Slavonic and East European Review. 8, 22-188-198. JSTA 4202-372. 29 de Gaumont, Remy. La France, 1915. 30 quoted in Brooker, Joseph, 2004. Joyce's Critics, Transitions in Reading and Culture. Madison. Wisc, University of Wisconsin Press. p. 73. ISBN 978-0299196042. 31 Symbolist Visions, The Role of Music in the Paintings of M. Casilianis Nathalie Laurent. Lituanus.org. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. 32 Sobolev, Olga, 2017. The Symbol of the Symbolists, Alexandre Bloch in the Changing Russian Literary Canon. Open Book Publishers. p. 147. ISBN 9781783740888. Retrieved 12 November, 2021. 33 Boris Christa, Andrei Billy and the Symbolist Movement in Russia. In the Symbolist Movement in the Literature of European Languages. John Benjamin's Publishing Company, 1984, p. 389. 34 Philippe Julien, The Symbolists, 1977, p. 55. 35 Julien, Philippe, The Symbolists. Dutton, 1977, ISBN 0-7148-1739-2. 36 Soncourt, Robert, 1971. Adamson, Donald, ed. T.S. Eliot, A Memoir. New York, Dodd, Mead and Company. pp. 27-28. ISBN 978-0-396-06347-6. 37 Lee 2020, Anna Vaninskaya, Modernity, Tolkien and His Contemporaries, pages 353-66. Further reading, edit. Anna Balakayan, The Symbolist Movement, A Critical Appraisal. New York, Random House, 1967. Michelle Fackus, Symbolist Art in Context. London, Routledge, 2011. Russell T. Clement, Four French Symbolists, a Sourcebook on Pierre Puvis de Chavannes. Gustave Moyot, Odilon Redon, and Maurice Denis. Westport, Con, Greenwood Press, 1996. Bernard Delvale, La Poésie Symboliste, Anthology. Paris, Sellers, 1971. ISBN 2-221-50161-6. John Porter Houston and Mona Tobin Houston, French Symbolist Poetry, an Anthology. Bloomington, Indiana University Press, 1980. ISBN 0-253-20250-7. Philippe Jullien, The Symbolists. Oxford, Phaidon, New York, E.P. Dutton, 1973. ISBN 0-7148. 1739-2. Andrew George Learman, The Symbolist Aesthetic in France 1885-1895. Oxford, Basil. Blackwell, 1950, 1968. The Oxford Companion to French Literature, Sir Paul Harvey and J. E. Heseltine, eds. Oxford. Oxford University Press, 1959. ISBN 0-19-866104-5. Mario Praz, The Romantic Agony. London, Oxford University Press, 1930. ISBN 0-19-281061-8. Arthur Simmons, The Symbolist Movement in Literature. E. P. Dutton and Company, Incorporated. A Dutton. Paperback, 1958. Edmund Wilson, Axel's Castle, A Study in the Imaginative Literature of 1870-1930. New York. Charles Scribner's Sons, 1931, online version. ISBN 978-1-59853-013-1, Library of America. Michael Gibson, Symbolism London, Taskin, 1995. ISBN 3822893242. Bernice Glatzer Rosenthal. Theatre as Church, The Vision of the Mystical Anarchists in Russian History, 1977, Volume 4, Number 2, 1977, pp. 122-141. Available online. External links, edit. Collection of German Symbolist Art, the Jacques Doton Collection. Les Poets Maudits by Paul Verlaine, in French. Art Magic, The Symbolist Gallery. What is Symbolism in Art? 10 Dreams Gallery's extensive article on symbolism. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF. Symbolism archived 19 May, 2012 at the Wayback Machine. Gustave Moyot, Puvis de Chavannes, Odilon Redon. Literary Symbolism, published in A Companion to Modernist Literature and Culture, 2006. Categories: Symbolism, Arts, Art Movements, Literary Movements, 19th Century in Art, 19th Century Theatre, Fantastic Art, French Poetry, Modern Art, Modernism. Symbolist Artists, Symbolist Works. Explore our developer-friendly HTML to PDF API printed using PDF Crowd HTML to PDF.